Last week I put up a video archiving a bunch of film and answering your questions, and the response was actually much better than I expected. I went home that day thinking I had just wasted a bunch of time and that nobody would really enjoy it, but a lot of you actually wanted this to be a new regular thing that I do, so here we are. I don't know if this is going to be a weekly thing, but part of me thinks it might be cool to do a weekly show where I kind of get caught up on this. It would keep me accountable and actually keeping up on doing this, but it would just be a good way to kind of catch up with you guys and talk a little bit more freely and less structured, and it just kind of feels like a podcast. And a lot of you guys actually said that you just kind of let the video play in the background while you were editing or archiving film yourself. So I don't have any specific questions planned for today. I actually just put out a little basically call for questions on Instagram a few minutes ago, so I'll check that here in a little bit and you guys can kind of get my first impressions and first thoughts to some of these questions. And I don't know if this will become like a new regular thing that I do every week on the channel, but part of me thinks I would actually really like that. Some of you guys might not realize this, but a few years ago I had a podcast that would be up every single week, and I was interviewing other photographers, and it was a lot of fun for me to just give other people a platform and kind of talk about their work, talk about their thought process while they're out shooting, and how they got into photography. Just overall a pretty laid back conversation. And I do want to bring that podcast back. It was really tough for me once the kids got older to kind of figure out a time that would work well for me and my guest. Everything was done over either Skype or FaceTime or a phone call, which is funny because nowadays everyone is doing video chats just given the situation, how we're all on lockdown. So now would probably be a really good time to be doing that, but here we are. But being able to just kind of talk a little bit more freely and not necessarily working off of a script or bullet points or talking points, this whole platform of me kind of just talking a little more freely as I do this and kind of catch up with you guys, it's kind of scratching that itch for me a little bit. It kind of feels like I'm sitting here recording a solo podcast, and I've always thought, if I bring the podcast back, I'm going to have to, make sure I have time to have a guest for every single episode, because nobody would want to listen to me talk to myself, even though I listen to other people who have solo podcasts every single week. For whatever reason, I've just always thought, people don't really want to hear that from me. But again, after the response from last week, I'm starting to think that maybe this could work as just sort of like a little extra thing that I do each week. So I've been bouncing around a lot of different ideas. I can either do this every week as I archive my film and upload the video and everything, or if you guys are really just playing this and, going on about your business and doing other things and not necessarily watching, you're just more listening to it, I could also just record the audio and upload it to iTunes or Spotify or any other podcast platform. And if I did that, I don't know that I would necessarily do this while I was archiving the film, but maybe I should. I don't know. Does that sound drive you guys crazy? Because part of me feels like it would. But again, the response was so well that I'm starting to wonder if maybe you guys don't mind that. I don't know. I'm talking in circles. Basically, all I need to know is, do you guys want me to do some kind of solo podcast like this where I'm just taking in questions from you guys each week and talking about them a little bit more freely, and I'm not necessarily constrained by a certain time limit on YouTube. YouTube videos statistically don't do as well when they're really long. A lot of people just don't have that kind of attention span, and I totally get that. But podcasts are a little bit different. I myself have recorded podcasts with other photographers that were over 2 hours long, and it was just an amazing conversation. I just feel like there's a lot you get out of just letting someone talk freely and not necessarily trying to get the quickest answer out there. There's a lot of nuance there and things that I appreciate listening to other people rather than just watching a quick video where there are specific strict talking points. So you guys will have to let me know what you think. If you want this to be a weekly thing here on YouTube, a weekly podcast, or maybe just both, where I upload the video here on YouTube and then I just rip the audio and upload that to a podcast platform, just let me know. Because again, I do enjoy this kind of thing. I like being able to talk a little more freely with you guys, and it would be a good way to, one, kind of keep you guys updated on everything that I'm doing. Sometimes it's hard to shoehorn certain topics into other videos where it just doesn't really fit, whereas this could be just an open kind of conversation. It's probably also from the quarantine and just, slowly losing my mind and feel like I'm talking to myself all of the time. That probably has something to do with it. But yeah, the response just over the last few days since that first Q&A video went up, it's really took me by surprise, and so I've been thinking about it nonstop the last couple of days. As well as the response to Social Distancing, my new publication that I just put out. The response to that has been pretty unreal, to be completely honest. I was, hopeful that we would be able to raise, $1,000 to give back to the community, maybe $2,000 if I was lucky. I'm not going to share the details just yet of how many books have sold because I want to wait until the 30 days are up and then I can give you guys like a final total amount. But we have raised a lot of money, far more than I ever expected. So I am super, super excited about that. It's to the point that I think I'm going to take the total that was raised and divide it up amongst multiple food banks just to make sure that the money is well spread out throughout the community and making sure it affects as many people as possible in a good way, because we have the opportunity now to really make a big difference, and I'm super, super excited about that. I was talking about it to my mom last night on the phone. She was asking how the sales were going, and I told her, and she was like, it's really good that you're doing this, given the fact that, your community really showed up for you when you needed it the most. A couple of years ago when I was sick and in the hospital and wasn't able to work, you guys here in this community legitimately saved me. So to be able to give back to, another community, my local community, feels really good. All about paying it forward. And I kind of talked about it in the last video, but seeing everybody posting stuff on Instagram and Twitter and tagging me that, letting me know that they got their copy and sharing their thoughts, it's just such an awesome feeling, and that's really got me motivated to start publishing a lot more. So I've got 2 projects that I need to finish shooting for that will eventually become books, but I also have 2 other ones that I already have all the photos for. I just need to start laying things out and putting it all together. One of them is a second edition of my first publication, Friend of Mine. This was a book that I did on Chillicothe, and at the time, releasing it in 2014, I shot most of the photos around 2012 to 2014. At the time when I made that book, the self-publishing options and the cost effectiveness of it all just was not where it is today. Things have improved a lot since then. And I was never fully happy with the way the book turned out in terms of the layout and the printing quality. Everything has improved since then. My own eye for sequencing things and laying things out is drastically better. And so it's always been on my mind to revisit those photos and do a second edition where I can change up the sequencing, maybe take out some of the photos, add newer photos that I've shot since then that would still fit the same theme of just a book about how I feel about Chillicothe and what I see when I think of Chillicothe, and just really honoring my area much better than I did the first time around. That's really been the goal. And so I think that's going to be the next immediate publication, is just one last run with Friend of Mine. I can give these photos a better home to live in and then just let it go from there, and that be the end of it. Maybe years from now I could do like a sequel to it and I could shoot all new photos of Chillicothe and really kind of capture the changes that have happened since the first time. So I'm going to start working on that immediately, and hopefully in the next month, after social distancing is no longer available, I will be ready to release my next one. And I really like the idea of just doing an open edition where there isn't a specific limit to the amount of copies that are sold, but I can just basically give it a time window kind of limit. So having a book available for 2 weeks to a month, that way as many people that want a copy, they can get a copy. It's not going to sell out, but at the same time, there's still some level of exclusivity to it. It's a fancy word for me. I really like that approach to it, so I think that's what I'm going to do for all of my publications moving forward. Hope you guys are enjoying this, because, like I said, even though you've all told me how much you enjoyed the last video, I am sitting here talking to myself thinking people have probably already turned off the video by now. Imposter syndrome at its finest. As a matter of fact, let's take a look and see what kind of questions we have so far. Josh Cheney, any chance of the podcast returning sometime? We've just been talking about that. Matt Seal, turnip prices. Today on my island, turnip prices were at 116 bells. I bought my turnips on Sunday at 108 bells each, so made a slight profit today. I went ahead and sold them anyway. It could jump up more tomorrow, but I don't have the patience. I saw the first day where I could turn a profit, and I went for it. And if you don't know what we're talking about, it's a shame. Jasper Gartman says, since you had both, which lens do you prefer on the Pentax 6.7? The 105mm or the 90mm? It's a good question because each lens really has its own strength. The 90mm, what I love about it is the fact that I can focus closer than I can with the 105. So shooting photos of the kids, my wife, really any people, I like to get in a little bit closer. And even some detail stuff as well. Whenever Molly and I went to Mohican for our anniversary, I did a little video shooting Ektar and Cinestill there with my Pentax 6.7, and I really liked the photos that I got there because I was able to focus closer than I would have been able to if I did have the 105 with me. But I borrowed a friend's 105 recently before I sold my Pentax to my buddy Chris, and I instantly remembered why everyone always buys that lens. I know it's just an f2.8 to an f2.4, and there's only a slight difference in the focal length, but that 105 2.4 is just special. Such a special signature kind of look that you can't really get with any other medium format setup in terms of just your standard lenses. I've seen people modify lenses and use different lens mounts on different camera bodies and stuff that give that sort of, you know, almost large format kind of look, but straight out of the box, the 105 on the 6.7 is just money. If I could only have one lens for the rest of my life, if I ever pick up a Pentax 6.7 again, and I could only have one of those two lenses, it would be the 105. What's the best way to develop film at home, and how do you feel about bulk loading? Just buying some Patterson tanks to develop at home is great. You could also buy the stainless steel tanks, but I personally find them a little bit more difficult to use, especially for beginners. So I would just buy some Patterson tanks to develop by hand. And how do I feel about bulk loading? I used to bulk load all of my HP5 for a few years, but I stopped after my canisters started to get worn out, and I didn't realize that. And after shooting a few rolls and getting some really bad light leaks, basically the felt on the inside of the canister, it was starting to give away, and I didn't realize that because it looked fine, but in fact it wasn't. And so I ended up getting a bunch of light leaks that I really didn't want, and that just kind of soured me on the whole experience of bulk loading. I know it's not a common thing, but it only takes one time to have a photo that you really want to see, and then you find out that it's actually ruined by some really ugly light leaks. After that, I just told myself it wasn't really worth the risk in terms of the cost difference, because you do save some money by bulk loading some films, not all films, but most films, that's usually the case, is that you can save some money. And another nice thing about it that people don't really talk about is, you know, if you want to test out a new camera that you bought, a new film camera, and you're not sure if it works completely properly, and you don't want to waste an entire roll of film, you could just bulk load, you know, 5 to 10, 15 shots and then go shoot that. And you're not going to waste a whole roll that way if the camera turns out to, you know, have some kind of issue. So I personally don't bulk load my film anymore, but there's still a video up on my channel from several years ago where I talk about how to do it and, you know, why I did it at the time. And yeah, hopefully that could be helpful for you if you are in the market to start bulk loading. What mic are you using? Looked like the Rode NTG. Thoughts on it? Yeah, right now I have the Rode Video Mic NTG boomed just out of frame. It's right there. That was weird. Yeah, the Rode Video Mic NTG is by far my favorite. I have it boomed right overhead and it's fed directly into the camera, so I don't have to sync in post, but I can also unplug it, plug in a USB-C cord into my MacBook, and I can just use it as a regular USB mic as well, which I've done for other podcasts and interviews I've done with people recently. This mic does a lot of things really, really well. I would love to make a whole video talking about why I love it so much. I don't know that you guys would really be interested in that, at least the majority of you, but if you would be interested in a full video on the Rode Video Mic NTG and why I love it so much, let me know, because I have a lot to say about this mic. But a short, quick review, it's incredible. How many tattoos do you have, and do you have a favorite? I have a bunch. I have my left arm, I have a full sleeve, and it's not like one continuous design. A lot of people put a lot of thought and make sure everything, you know, ties in together and that it's this one big piece. I've got more of what they call a sticker collection, where I've got a bunch of different tattoos all over my arm. All of them have to do with either photography or family in some way, except for this one right here, this Altamont one. That's a skate company. It was started by Andrew Reynolds, who is like my idol, and that's the only one that isn't really related to photography or family. It was just a matter of, I've always been a big fan of them, as well as Andrew Reynolds. Their whole kind of motto, cut from a different cloth. It was a group of a lot of different kinds of people all coming together, and the company really, more so when it started, it was really all about skateboarding and music and art, and it was like just sort of a big celebration of so many different things that I love. And that was definitely a big influence on me when I was younger. So everything else, it's either cameras that I've used and, you know, really love for their own kind of sentimental reasons, or the other ones have to do with family. And then I've got other ones on this arm and chest and legs, and I've got a bunch, but I don't really like talk about them or show them. If people like want to see them in person, I'll show them. I don't care, but I don't know, it just feels weird to be like, look at me. I don't know. People have asked that question a lot over the years, and I feel like I've given this same answer every single time, but yeah, sorry. What softwares did you use to design your zine? So I actually have a full video on making the zine in terms of shooting it, laying it out, and kind of talking about everything that went into it. But in short, I used Lightroom on my iPad Pro. I would download my film scans to my Dropbox, open them up in Lightroom, make any kind of contrast adjustments that I needed to, and then I imported everything over to my MacBook and I laid everything out on InDesign. I tried a few different apps on the iPad, and I would have liked to be able to lay it out on the iPad just because I had all of the photos already on there, and my MacBook screen is not great. Although I did just upgrade to the new 16-inch MacBook Pro last night, so I cannot wait until that gets in. But I tried a few different apps on the iPad, and nothing really worked as well as InDesign would on the MacBook. So I wish they had InDesign for iPad. Maybe that will come eventually. But yeah, I had to use InDesign on my MacBook Pro. I tried Pages on the iPad Pro, and I actually just downloaded a new app called Canva a few days ago, just to try it out to see, because that was one that I didn't know about when I was putting the zine together. And you can download it for free. You do have to pay to unlock certain features, which I don't mind doing, but I haven't really taken a good look at the app yet, so I'm going to need to revisit that one. But if it does look like a good option to lay something out on an iPad, I'll probably share that here somewhere on the channel or make a video about it. Is there a reason why you've never self-developed color negative? I used to develop all of my color negative at home back in 2012 and 2013 mostly, so I haven't done it in a long time, but I used to do it just about every day. So it's not that hard. If you can do black and white, you can do color, and if you can do color, you can do E6. They're all really, really similar. The main difference between black and white and color negative is the temperature and making sure your temperature is good and controlled. There are a lot of good videos on developing color negative film at home though. My buddy Willem has a great video. The main reason I stopped developing color negative at home is just because of scanning. Scanning color negative film on a flatbed scanner is a little more tedious than it is to just scan black and white, and I've always preferred black and white more than I prefer color, so for me it just came down to sticking with what I like. Then, right around the time that I started scanning with my old Fuji X-T3, I started to get much more comfortable with scanning color negative film because of that process, as well as Negative Lab Pro. Those two combined makes for scanning color negative at home a lot easier and just more enjoyable for rather than using like Epson Scan and a flatbed scanner. That's just for me. It might be different for you. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. So it's definitely doable. It's just a matter of sticking to what I like. Making some good progress today, and I've been talking for a while. I'm gonna do one more roll and then I'm gonna stop for the day because I need to also film a little video for Ilford's YouTube channel. So this is, I guess, a little plug for that. Go subscribe to Ilford's YouTube channel. I'll link that down below. And sometime soon, I don't know exactly when, but I'll have a little video up on Ilford's channel. And I'm sleeving a roll of HP5. Oh, would you look at that? Oh, and this roll has a photo of my good friend Zach Parks. If you guys aren't familiar with his YouTube channel, definitely check it out. A couple photos I made of him and Ari whenever they came through Chillicothe last year. Good people. Alright, let's find one last question to end on. At what point did you start feeling confident in your work? I will let you know when I get there. No, I do feel confident in my work in some areas, but I always feel like I have a lot of room to improve and a lot of room to grow, which is a good thing. I kind of talked about it earlier, you know, imposter syndrome. That affects me greatly. Just constantly feeling like maybe I don't deserve any recognition that I get or any opportunity that I get. I'm getting better about it, but it's still tough for me. My wife will attest to that. I am definitely my biggest critic by far. But feeling confident in my work, I think, has just come from doing it for so long. I've tried to take just each passing year as basically an exercise and time to work and time to grow. I was actually thinking about this last night too as I was laying there in bed. It's interesting being on YouTube where I'm sharing work all of the time and taking new photos for videos that people are automatically going to see. And if I go back and look at certain years in regards to my photography, it's not like every year is going to be better than the last. There are, you know, peaks and valleys, and I feel like there have been some years where I've really kind of had things dialed in and I was really growing as a photographer, and then other years I've just kind of felt like I've been a little bit stagnant, and you're not always improving. Getting in your reps is important, you know, always shooting and always trying to improve, but at least for me personally, I've seen plenty of years where I've just thought like I didn't really grow that much as a photographer that year. But I think that's okay. I think that's just part of it, and it's going to be different for everybody. It just feels different when I'm sharing all of the photos, whether I'm having a good year or a bad year, or a good week or a bad week. I'm sharing them just because I want this to be a helpful YouTube channel. I want people to be able to see it and get something positive out of it and get some kind of information out of it that can help them become a better photographer. Most of the time you only see a photographer's best work. You only see their portfolio, where I've tried to make myself sort of like an open book for the sake of other people being able to get some kind of useful information out of it to help them. And that's probably part of why I struggle so much with like feeling confident in my work, is because everything that I put out there isn't always my best work. It's just what I'm working on in real time and trying to just give the point of view of another photographer who was just working on it like everybody else. So I feel like I started feeling confident in my work early on when people first started hiring me for work. So that was probably 10 or 11 years ago, so I was maybe 4 or 5 years in already, and I had been shooting pretty much anything and everything, just trying to get a better understanding of photography and figure out what my strengths were and what my voice really was, which again, I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface today as to what my voice really is, but again, it's just all about getting closer to that. So once I started actually getting hired for work, I started to naturally get a little bit more confident in my work, but still to this day, I mean, it's something that I think everybody struggles with. I can't really pinpoint exactly when I started feeling confident. It just came from time and a lot of work, but again, some days I might feel a little more confident than other days. You know, sometimes I feel like I have barely made a single good photo in the last 16 years. So it's going to come down to each person and each day, I think, really. But yeah, probably early on, maybe 10 or 11 years ago when I first started working as a photographer in terms of like being hired for jobs, that definitely gave me my first sense of, I guess, confidence in that I knew what I was doing and where I was supposed to be. But that's going to do it for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Again, I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about this format. If you want to make this a weekly thing where I sit down in front of the camera and archive the film and answer questions and just talk a little bit freely, or if you would prefer it to just be an audio form with no archiving involved, or if you want both. You want both, we can do both. Let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, that's it for today. So like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new here. We have new videos every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. But that is it for today. So thank you guys for everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.